I was already bleeding when I realized the woods had gone quiet. Not the normal quiet, either. Not the respectful pause you get before dawn when everything's holding its breath. This was a dead quiet. Like someone had turned the sound off with a switch. My left hand was numb inside my glove, slick and warm. I'd scraped it bad scrambling down a shale slope I'd walked 100 times before. I couldn't remember falling. I just remembered the sound of my own breath getting too loud, and then the silence answering back. That's when I knew something was wrong. I'm 45 years old. I've been hunting these mountains since my knees were still good and my father was still alive to tell me I was doing everything wrong. I know the difference between fear and nerves. I know when the woods are just being the woods. This wasn't that. I stood there with my rifle half-raised, a .308 Winchester I've trusted longer than most people, smelling the familiar mix of cold steel and gun oil. My heart was banging hard enough that the sling tapped against the stock. I forced myself to slow my breathing. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. The air felt thin, like there wasn't quite enough of it to go around. Late autumn in the Appalachians does that to you. Leaves dead and blackened, clinging to the ground like old paper. The cold not sharp yet, but heavy. It seeps instead of bites. I told myself it was just a lull. Birds go quiet sometimes. Wind shifts. Happens. Except the wind didn't shift. It pulled. I felt it on my face, on the back of my neck. Cold air coming from ahead of me. And from behind. And from my right side, all at once. Like standing in the middle of a slow, invisible fan. I turned in a slow circle, boots crunching too loud on frozen leaves. The sound echoed wrong. Too far. Like the trees were farther apart than they should be. That's when I noticed the circle. At first I thought it was a trick of light. Late afternoon sun slanting through bare branches. But as I moved, it stayed perfect. A ring of trees, maybe 30 yards across, all spaced evenly. Same height. Same thickness. No underbrush. No fallen limbs. I'd walked this ridge for decades. There was no clearing here. My mouth tasted like pennies. I wiped my bleeding hand on my jacket and left a dark smear on the thermal camo. I remember thinking, stupidly, how my wife was going to be pissed about the blood. That jacket wasn't cheap. I should have left then. That's the thing people don't get about fear. It doesn't always make you run. Sometimes it makes you curious. Sometimes it makes you angry. I stepped closer to the ring. The silence followed me. No birds. No squirrels. No distant traffic from the highway miles away. Not even the usual ringing in your ears. Just nothing. My boots crossed the invisible line and the air changed. It wasn't colder. It was flatter. like breathing inside a closed room. Every hair on my arm stood up under the fabric. The trees inside the circle weren't right. The bark was smooth, almost waxy, and the trunks were too straight. No scars. No knots. They looked grown, not grown up. I told myself it was planted timber. Old reclamation project. That made sense. It didn't explain why my compass was spinning. I tapped it with my finger. The needle wobbled, then started turning slow circles, like it was thinking about it. That's when I heard my mother's voice. "Don't go in there," she said, soft and tired. "You never listen. She's been dead 12 years. The sound came from behind me. Not loud. Not echoing. Just there. Like she was standing close enough that I could smell her old cigarette smoke and lavender soap. My fingers went numb. Not from the cold. From something deeper. The part of your brain that handles words just shuts down sometimes. I didn't turn around. I've tracked wounded bears. I've had a black bear bluff charge me at 30 yards. This was worse. Because I knew, without knowing how, that if I turned and saw her, I wouldn't be able to leave. "I'm fine, Mom," I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine. "Just hunting." There was a pause. I could feel it. The woods leaning in. Then she laughed. "Wrong. Too many beats between breaths. That's not why you're here." The trees creaked. Not from wind. From pressure. Like they were shifting their weight. I raised the rifle, aimed at nothing. My hands were shaking so bad the scope danced. I couldn't get a sight picture. The copper taste flooded my mouth, sharp and sour. I backed up. 1 step. 2. The circle moved with me. I stumbled and almost fell again. My boot caught on something soft. I looked down. Deer tracks. Fresh. Deep. Only they were wrong, too. Too close together. Toes splayed like a man trying to walk quietly. I don't remember deciding to run. I just did. The woods exploded back into sound as I crossed out of the ring. Birds screamed. Wind roared through branches. My own breathing came back, ragged and loud. I didn't stop until my lungs burned and my legs threatened to fold. I leaned against an oak and slid down, rifle across my knees, sweat freezing under my jacket. I waited a long time. The sun dipped lower, turning everything gray and flat. Nothing followed me. I laughed then. A harsh bark that hurt my throat. Shock, probably. I told myself I'd spooked myself. Old man jumping at shadows. I packed up and headed back toward my truck. Took the long way, staying low, watching everything. That's when I saw the deer. It stood at the edge of a ravine, 50 yards out. Big buck. 8-point at least. Thick neck, winter coat coming in. Perfect shot. I raised the rifle, settled the crosshairs behind its shoulder. My finger took up the slack on the trigger. The deer looked at me. Not the skittish glance prey gives. It turned its head slowly, deliberately, until its eyes met mine. They were too forward. Too focused. It opened its mouth. "Don't," it said, in my mother's voice. The rifle went off anyway. The recoil slammed into my shoulder. The shot echoed down the ravine. I lost the deer in the scope for half a second. When I found it again, it was still standing. The bullet hole was there. I could see dark blood soaking into its chest. It didn't fall. It didn't even flinch. Then its front legs bent, wrong, and it stood up. I don't have a better way to say it. It stood on two legs, hindquarters stretching, spine cracking like green wood. Its head tilted, neck lengthening. The antlers scraped branches as it straightened. It was shaped like a man wearing a deer the way you wear a coat. I couldn't move. My fingers forgot the trigger. My feet forgot the ground. It took a step toward me. Then another. Each one careful, testing. The smell hit me then. Wet fur. Rot. Old copper. "See," it said. "You never listen." I screamed. I know I did. I don't remember the sound. I ran. Dropped the rifle somewhere. Crashed through brush, slid down slopes, tore my hands and face. The woods closed in, branches grabbing like hands. Behind me, something moved. Not fast. Patient. I tripped and rolled, came up against a rock outcrop. Dead end. I grabbed my sidearm, a battered 9mm I carry more out of habit than faith. My hands were useless. I fumbled the grip, nearly dropped it. The thing stepped into view. Up close, it was worse. The face inside the deer's skull wasn't my mother's. It was mine. Older. Meaner. Eyes too deep. It smiled with a mouth that didn't fit. I fired until the slide locked back. The shots were deafening. The smell of cordite burned my nose. The bullets did nothing. They sank into it like throwing rocks into mud. It reached for me. And then the ground gave way. The edge of the outcrop crumbled under its weight. Rock and dirt slid, taking it with them. It fell, tumbling down the ravine, hitting trees, breaking branches. The sound went on and on. I didn't wait to see if it got up. I don't remember getting back to my truck. I don't remember driving. I came to sitting in my driveway, engine running, hands locked on the steering wheel, blood dried black on my jacket. I didn't hunt again that season. Told people I was sick. That my knees were acting up. They didn't argue. They said I looked tired. It's been weeks now. The cut on my hand healed crooked. The jacket never quite lost the smell. I sit in my living room at night, lights on, TV loud. My wife thinks it helps. Sometimes I catch my reflection in the window. The glass is dark, a mirror. Most of the time, it moves when I do. Sometimes it doesn't. Second story. The Great Silence, 72 hours after the grid died. Hour 0. My phone stopped charging first. I noticed because I unplugged it, flipped the cable over, plugged it back in. Nothing. No vibration. No lightning bolt icon. Just the same 7% it had been sitting at all afternoon. I said, "Great," out loud. Like that helps. I tried a different outlet. Then another. Then the lamp by the couch. The lamp didn't turn on either. That's when I figured it was a fuse. Old building. Happens all the time. I went to the breaker box in the hall. Everything looked normal. No switches tripped. No burning smell. The Wi-Fi dropped next. That little fan-shaped icon vanished, replaced by nothing. I refreshed. Turned airplane mode on and off. Reflexes. Muscle memory. Still annoying. Not scary yet. Outside, traffic noise thinned out. Not stopped. Just thinned. Like someone slowly turning down a volume knob. Hour 2. The hallway lights were out. Emergency lights didn't kick in. No green exit signs. Just a long, gray tunnel smelling like old carpet and cleaning chemicals. Someone laughed down the hall. Nervous. Too loud. A door slammed. Someone else shouted, asking if anyone had power. I checked my phone again. 5%. I opened the flashlight app. Big mistake. Too bright. Drained faster than I expected. I turned it off after maybe 10 seconds. My eyes took forever to adjust back. When I looked out the window, the city was wrong. Not dark. Dark is normal. This was empty. No glow from streetlights. No red dots from traffic signals. No office towers lit up like honeycombs. Just black. Thick black. Like it had weight. The city just stopped breathing. Hour 6. It's quiet in a way I didn't know cities could be. No HVAC hum. No distant sirens. No subways rumbling under the floor. Just voices. Thousands of them, down in the streets, but nobody is shouting. Everyone is whispering. I leaned out the window and listened. It sounded like a crowd at a funeral. Afraid to make noise. Afraid noise might answer back. The air smells bad already. Garbage, yes, but also something metallic. Old copper. Like pennies in your mouth. The building's pipes aren't circulating anymore. The air feels thick. Unfiltered. My phone hit 4%. I checked the news. Nothing loading. I opened my contacts without thinking and almost called my mom. She's been dead 3 years. I closed it and sat on the floor, embarrassed at myself, even though no one was watching. Hour 12. Someone knocked on my door. I didn't answer at first. I don't know why. Maybe because knocking feels aggressive when everything else is so quiet. He introduced himself as Alan. Apartment 14C. I'm on 14F. I've seen him before. Always carrying groceries at weird hours. Always nodding like he knows a joke you don't. He had a headlamp on. Red light, not white. White kills your night vision, he said, like he'd rehearsed it. He asked if I had water. I did. A few bottles. We traded. He gave me candles. Thick ones. Handmade. Smelled like nothing. They won't drip much, he said. And don't put them near the windows. I asked him what happened. He shrugged. Doesn't matter. Then he said something I can't stop thinking about. The lights weren't just for us to see, he said. They were to keep other things from settling. I asked him what things. He smiled. Not friendly. Comfortable. You'll hear it, he said. When it's dark enough. Day 1. I slept badly. Not because of fear. Because of silence. Without the city noise, every sound in the apartment felt amplified. My own breathing. The tick of the cooling walls. Somewhere far below, metal clanging as people tried to force open storefronts. The stars are wrong. I've lived here 10 years and never seen them like this. The sky is full. Crowded. Like it's leaning closer. The candles work. The flame looks stretched. Like it's being pulled upward. When I blow one out, the darkness rushes in faster than it should. I think that's when I first noticed the static. It's not noise. It's visual. A graininess in the shadows. Like the air itself is full of interference. When I stare at it directly, it smooths out. When I look away, shapes form. Hard angles. Not organic. Not human. They don't move when you watch them. They move when you blink. Day 2. Water pressure is gone. Toilets don't flush. Pipes clack and knock like dry teeth when you turn the taps. The smell in the stairwell is getting worse. Garbage. Sweat. Something sour. Alan came back. This time he didn't knock. He just opened the door like he knew it wouldn't be locked. He asked if I'd heard the walking yet. I told him no. He tilted his head. You will. That night, I did. Clack. 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 Slow. Even. Coming from below. Someone climbing the stairs. Not running. Not rushing. 20 flights is a lot in the dark. Whoever it was didn't breathe hard. Didn't swear. Just kept climbing. No flashlight beam. No phone glow. The sound passed my floor and kept going. No doors opened. No doors closed. Day 3. I'm writing this by candle stub. Food is low. Water's gone. The building feels smaller. I know that sounds stupid, but the ceiling feels lower. The walls closer. The static is worse in the stairwell. It clings to the corners. Pools and landings. I decided to leave. Alan was already there, sitting on the stairs between floors like he'd been waiting. Don't go alone, he said. They like gaps. I didn't ask who they were. Going down is worse than going up. You can't see where the steps end. Your foot just searches. The stairs feel longer than yesterday. Like they're stretching. On the 9th floor, a door rattled. From the inside. Not pounding. Holding. Like something was leaning its weight against it. We didn't stop. On the 5th floor, the darkness got thicker. I couldn't see my hand. Not even a shape. Just absence. Something moved in the static. A silhouette made of angles. It shifted when I turned my head. I felt it pass close enough that my skin prickled. Alan whispered, "Don't name it." My phone died somewhere between floors. I didn't even notice until I reached for it out of habit. Final entry. We're outside now. The city is still whispering. The static is everywhere, pooled in alleys, clinging under cars, stacked between buildings where the light used to live. Alan says the grid will come back someday. He says that's the worst part. Because once you've seen what the dark was holding back, you can't unsee it. The stars overhead look sharp. Like they're listening. If the lights come on again and you're reading this, don't celebrate too loud. Some things learned how to wait. 3rd story. The Novosibirsk frequency, case file number 88 Delta. Click. Whir. That's the recorder. Still works. Soviet make. Heavy as a brick. They don't build things like this anymore. Or maybe they do, and I just don't get issued them. I don't have much time left. The doctors were careful not to give dates, but you learn to hear that tone. And the agency doesn't watch me the way it used to. Half the men who knew my name are dead. The other half pretend they don't remember. So I'm talking now. You need to know what we heard in the static. I was an interceptor. Signals intelligence. Not glamorous. I didn't wear a trench coat or drink martinis. I sat in a concrete box on a mountain nobody cared about and listened to the world hum. The post didn't officially exist. High altitude. Eastern Turkey, depending on which map you used. Close enough to the Soviet border to taste it. The bunker was poured concrete and regret. No windows. Just racks of shortwave receivers, oscilloscopes glowing green, magnetic tape reels spinning day and night. The air always smelled the same. Ozone from the tubes. Stale cigarettes ground into the floor. Burnt coffee that had been reheated too many times because nobody wanted to walk back to the mess hall. This was 1981. Cold War at full boil. Berlin Wall still standing. Nevada lighting up the desert every few months. The Soviets testing in the Urals like they were trying to crack the planet open. We listened for number stations. Everyone did. Female voices reading sequences. 5 digits. Pause. Repeat. Boring, but important. Codes for illegals. Sleeper cells. That kind of thing. Case file number 88 Delta started as routine interference. At 2:17 local, my receiver picked up a carrier wave broadcasting out of western Siberia. Near Novosibirsk, triangulated. Frequency drifted slightly, like old equipment or intentional masking. I logged it. Tuned in. There were no numbers. There was breathing. At first I thought it was line noise. Atmospheric distortion. Solar activity does strange things to shortwave. I adjusted the gain. The breathing stayed. Then it started screaming. Not loud. Not distorted. Clear. Close. Like someone with their mouth pressed right up against the microphone, throat tearing itself apart. I froze. Hand on the dial. Heart doing something unpleasant. I switched to the backup receiver. Same signal. Same screaming. I checked the oscilloscope. The waveform was wrong. Too irregular. Too organic. Radio signals are clean, even when they're dirty. This wasn't. I logged it as anomalous vocalization, source unknown and notified command. They told me to keep recording. The screaming stopped after 6 minutes and 12 seconds. Replaced by a voice. Male. Calm. Neutral accent. It said my name. Full name. Correct pronunciation. Then it described my uniform. The patch on my shoulder. The cigarette burn on my left sleeve I hadn't bothered to fix. I shut the receiver off. Command called back within 30 seconds. Asked why the signal dropped. I told them it was equipment failure. That was my first mistake. Over the next weeks, the frequency returned. Always Novosibirsk. Always the same carrier drift. Sometimes screaming. Sometimes whispering. Sometimes nothing but a low vibration that made your teeth ache if you listened too long. We assigned it a file number. 88 Delta. Labeled it possible PSYOPs/unknown Soviet platform. The analysts loved that. Unknowns justify budgets. One night, the voice changed. It was my son. Daniel had died 3 years earlier. Car accident outside Frankfurt. Wrong place. Wrong night. I identified the body myself. I don't talk about that part. On the tape, his voice was older than he ever got to be. Calmer. He said, "Dad, you need to turn the knob to the left." I didn't. He described the room instead. The racks. The oscilloscopes. The coffee stain on the desk shaped like Italy. Then he asked why I never told his mother I was sorry for not coming home sooner. I pulled the headphones off and threw up in the trash can. I filed the report as auditory hallucination, operator fatigue. They accepted it. That's the second mistake. We brought in technicians. New receivers. Shielded cables. A stenotype operator to transcribe in real time. Encrypted telexes went back and forth between us and Langley with more redactions than text. The signal didn't care. It started describing things that hadn't happened yet. A power outage 2 minutes before it hit. A coffee mug falling off a desk in the next room. A man in Moscow lighting a cigarette he'd quit years earlier. Someone suggested it was a numbers station upgraded with psychological profiling. Targeted harassment. The Soviets were good, but not that good. Then the physicists got involved. They talked about resonance. About how repeated nuclear tests sent vibrations through the planet. How certain frequencies could overlap. Interfere. Tear. They never said hole. They said breach event. The idea was simple and terrible. The arms race didn't just rattle sabers. It rattled reality. And something on the other side noticed the noise. Radio waves don't care about borders. Or walls. Or worlds. The signal wasn't transmitting information. It was leaking. Containment orders came down in '83. Shut down monitoring. Seal the tapes. Archive everything under joint classification. The frequency was to be ignored. I obeyed. Mostly. I kept one reel. Labeled it wrong. Took it home when I retired. Told my wife it was an old language tape. She never listened. She hated the sound of static. Sometimes, Late at night, I played it quietly. The voice stopped pretending to be my son eventually. It got more administrative. It listed names, dates, causes of death that hadn't happened yet. It asked questions. Not why. Not how. Where? Where do you go when the noise stops? Where do you put things you don't need anymore? Where does a signal go when there's nothing left to receive it? My wife died in 1996. Cancer. I didn't tell her about the tape. That's my regret. Not the secrets. Not the lies. That I heard our boy's voice and kept it to myself. The Cold War ended. Walls fell. Budgets shrank. Everyone pretended the hum went away. It didn't. It changed frequency. I know because last week, by accident, I found it again. Digital this time. Buried in background noise on an internet relay stream. Clean. Strong. It whispered my name. Pause. I'm going to stop the tape now. If anyone finds this, do what you want with it. Archive it. Burn it. Bury it under 1,000 feet of concrete. Just don't assume silence means it's gone. Fourth story. The blueprint for room 402. Most people think walls are just wood and stone. They aren't. They're decisions. Measurements. Boundaries meant to keep here separate from there. When those boundaries get sloppy, bad things happen. Not ghosts. Not curses. Failures. That's what ruined my career. Calling a failure by its real name when the client wanted a miracle. I used to teach architectural history. Before that, I worked job sites. Real ones. Rebar under the fingernails. I know how buildings lie, and I know when they're telling the truth. Universities don't like that kind of honesty. They prefer narratives that end clean. This one didn't. The blueprint came to me in a cardboard tube that smelled like dust and ozone. Old paper and old wiring. A courier dropped it at my apartment with no return address. No note. Just my name, spelled wrong. 1 L instead of 2. Inside was a full set of plans for a building labeled Cedar Heights Residential, dated 1971. The thing is, Cedar Heights doesn't exist. At least, not officially. I recognized the footprint immediately. A brutalist apartment block wedged between a parking garage and a glass office tower downtown. 40 years old. Concrete poured thick and cheap. I'd walked past it 100 times and never noticed it, which should tell you something. Buildings like that are meant to disappear. The exterior lists 12 floors. The plans showed 13. That was the first error. I rolled the sheets out on my drafting table and started checking dimensions. Habit. The hallways looped. Literally. Corridor A fed into Corridor C without intersecting B. Stairwell 2 led from the 5th floor to the 7th, skipping the 6th entirely. Load-bearing walls floated where columns should have been. Between apartments were narrow voids. Dead spaces. 16 to 20 inches wide. No access panels. No doors. Just blank cavities labeled with a single letter, R. I assumed renovation drafts. Bad ones. Someone feeding garbage into early CAD software and letting it smooth the edges. Except the math worked. That's the problem. Every load calculated. Every stress accounted for. The building could stand. Should stand. But not like that. Room 402 was circled in red pencil. Not on the printed legend. Handwritten note in the margin. Do not correct. I laughed when I read it. A short, dry sound. That's what you do when something doesn't fit but you don't know why yet. I went to the site the next morning. Cedar Heights sits behind the newer tower, half hidden, like it got embarrassed and tried to step out of the photo. The lobby smelled like wet drywall and old electricity. That warm, dusty scent you get when insulation's been heating up for decades without burning. The elevator was dead. I took the stairs. Concrete steps. Steel rail. My footfalls echoed wrong. Too close together. Like the stairwell was narrower than code, but only when I was in it. 4th floor. The hallway ceiling felt low. Not dramatically. 6 inches, maybe. Enough that my shoulders hunched without me noticing until my neck started to ache. Unit numbers were stenciled metal, bolted into the walls. 401, 403. Number 402. That didn't surprise me. It shouldn't have existed. According to the city permits, the 4th floor had 6 units. According to the blueprint, it had 7, with one wedged between the others at an angle that made no sense. I walked the hall anyway. Counted steps. Tapped walls. Between 401 and 403, the sound changed. Drywall usually gives you a hollow thud. Stud every 16 inches. Predictable. This was dense. Padded. Like knocking on a mattress nailed upright. I leaned my ear against it. I could hear pipes. Copper, old. Rattling lightly. Not from flow. From vibration. Like dry teeth chattering. There was a door. Not a proper one. No number. No peephole. Just painted the same beige as the wall, edges poorly caulked. The hinges were on the wrong side. I checked the blueprint again. Room 402 wasn't listed as a residence. It was marked transitional space. That's not a real category. The handle was warm. I didn't open it right away. I measured. The hallway width from baseboard to baseboard. 8 feet on the plan. In reality, it was 7.5. The missing 6 inches were gone everywhere, not just here. I opened the door. The room was too small. Not in a vague way. In a way you can quantify. According to the plan, it should have been 12 by 14. I paced it out. 11 by 13. The walls leaned inward at the top, just enough to mess with your balance. The wallpaper was peeling. Underneath, the surface wasn't plaster. It was flexible. It moved when I pressed it, slow to rebound. The smell was wrong. Not mold. Not rot. Something organic and stale, like a basement that had learned to sweat. I checked the ceiling. No fixtures. No vents. The light came from nowhere, a dull ambient gray that didn't cast shadows correctly. When I spoke, my voice came back late. I backed out and shut the door. Stood in the hall and breathed until my hands stopped shaking. This is where a better man would have left. I went back to my apartment and overlaid the blueprint onto a modern satellite map. Adjusted for scale. Rotated. Aligned the stairwells. Room 402 sat directly against the core of the building. Where the main support mass should have been. It wasn't stealing space. It was creating it. The dead spaces labeled are formed a ring around it, like insulation. Or padding. I returned at night. The building sounded different after dark. Pipes ticking. Concrete contracting. A low vibration under everything else, steady and patient. Inside 402, the walls pulsed. Not visibly. You could feel it if you leaned close. A slow expansion and release, like a throat swallowing. The wallpaper had split in places. Beneath it was a layer that looked fibrous. Striated. When I touched it, my finger left a dent that filled in after a few seconds. I took measurements again. They were smaller. Not by much. Fractions of an inch. But consistent. The room was losing volume. I realized then that the blueprints weren't plans. They were records. Every revision showed room 402 slightly larger in older drafts. The dead spaces thicker. The hallways longer. The building wasn't haunted. It was feeding. Structures are supposed to distribute load. This one concentrated it. Redirected stress inward. Human traffic. Heat. Sound. All of it bled toward the center. Room 402 wasn't a room. It was a buffer. A digestive organ. I heard a noise behind the wall. A shifting. The pipes rattled harder, like something had grabbed them. The ceiling dropped. Not crashing. Just, closer. I understood the note then. Do not correct. If you fixed the math, if you reclaimed the lost inches, the pressure would go somewhere else. Probably outward. I left the blueprints on the floor and walked out. Didn't run. Didn't look back. The city demolished Cedar Heights 6 months later. Official reason: structural instability. The lot is still empty. Sometimes, when I'm lying in bed, I think about the space in my apartment. The way rooms feel different at night. Smaller. Tighter. I don't draw plans anymore. But I still measure. Just to make sure nothing's taking more than it's supposed to. Fifth story. The man on the 2 a.m. night bus. The bus smelled like wet fabric and old heat. That's the first thing I noticed when I got on. Not fear. Not dread. Just that sour, moldy smell you get when rain soaks into seats that never fully dry. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered in a tired, irregular way, like they were deciding whether it was worth staying on. It was 2 a.m. on the dot. I know because I checked my phone 3 times before it died at 1%. I'd missed the last train. Again. 12-hour shift, overtime unpaid, brain fried. All I wanted was my bed and 4 hours of sleep before doing it again. The bus hissed as the doors closed behind me. Pneumatic. Sharp. Final. There were maybe 6 people on board. All spaced out. No one talking. Everyone doing that late-night city thing where you pretend other humans aren't real because acknowledging them takes too much energy. I sat halfway back on the lower deck. Fabric seat. Damp. I didn't bother moving. The bus lurched forward, suspension groaning, and the city slid past in streaks of sodium orange light. My reflection floated in the window beside me, blurred, stretched, eyes too dark from exhaustion. I barely recognized myself. That's when I noticed him. The passenger. He was sitting at the very back. Last row. Dead center. At first glance, nothing obviously wrong. Tall. Broad shoulders. Heavy winter coat zipped all the way up to his chin. It was July. I frowned at the window, then glanced back, just to check. Same thing. Thick coat. Gloves. No bag. Sitting perfectly upright. Hands folded in his lap like he was posing for a photo. Whatever, I muttered. Some people run cold. Or weird. Still, something about the way he was sitting felt staged. Too neat. Too intentional. I looked away. The bus rattled over uneven asphalt. The rhythmic shaking started to work on my nerves, that low, constant vibration that crawls up your spine when you're overtired. Somewhere above us, on the upper deck, something heavy shifted. Thump. I froze. Then another thump, slower this time. Like someone walking carefully. I reminded myself there were other passengers. People move. Buses make noise. I checked the driver. He was there. Hood up. Face mostly shadow. Hands on the wheel. Good. I relaxed a little. At the next stop, the bus hissed again and the doors opened. No one was there. The automated announcer crackled. The speaker popped. Next stop, it said, then paused. Too long, Harrow Road. The voice sounded wrong. Stretched. Like the audio file was being dragged through mud. We pulled away. 10 minutes later, I saw the gas station. It was burned out. Windows blackened. Sign half melted and leaning. I remembered it because I passed it every night. A landmark of neglect. We rolled past it, and I leaned my head back, eyes half closed. When I opened them again, the gas station was there. Same angle. Same broken sign. Same flickering streetlight out front. I sat up. No. That wasn't right. I watched carefully as we passed it a third time. My stomach tightened. The bus hadn't turned. I was sure of it. No intersections. No curves. Just a straight stretch of road that shouldn't loop. I glanced at the other passengers. No reaction. Heads down. Phones dead or glowing dim. I checked the reflection in the window. The man at the back was looking straight at me. Not directly. Through the glass. His eyes were fixed on my reflection, unblinking. I felt a cold sweat break out across my shoulders, sticking my shirt to my back. Don't stare. That's rude. Maybe he's just zoned out. Why isn't the driver checking the mirror? I shifted in my seat. The fabric squelched softly. From upstairs. Thump. Thump. Closer now. The announcer crackled again. Next stop, it said cheerfully, nowhere. My heart slammed so hard I thought I might gag. That wasn't possible. Someone had to be messing with the system. A prank. A glitch. The bus slowed. Doors hissed open. Nothing outside. Just darkness and an empty sidewalk. The man at the back stood up. The bus dipped slightly under his weight. He was taller than I thought. The coat hung off him stiffly, like it wasn't bending with his joints. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate. He just started walking forward. Each step made no sound on the floor. I told myself not to panic. People walk. That's normal. He stopped beside my seat. I stared straight ahead, pretending my reflection wasn't showing. His head tilted at an angle that made my neck hurt just looking at it. You always sit on this side, he said. His voice was wrong. Too soft. Too thin. Like it was coming through a bad speaker. And it didn't match him. I expected something deep. Instead it sounded tired. Familiar. I swallowed. Sorry. He leaned closer. I smelled something stale. Not rot. Just old air. Like a room sealed for decades. You missed your stop last winter, he continued. The night your phone died. You walked home in the snow instead. My heart felt like a trapped bird, wings slamming against my ribs. That had happened. No one else knew that. You didn't tell anyone, he said. You never tell anyone. I stood up so fast my knees slammed into the seat in front of me. I'm getting off, I said, louder than I meant to. None of the other passengers reacted. The doors were still open. I didn't care where we were. I stepped past him. The space between us felt tight, like pushing through a doorway that was a little too small. For a split second, I felt pressure against my chest, like something was leaning into me from the inside. I bolted down the steps and onto the sidewalk. Cold air. Real air. The doors hissed shut behind me. I turned. The bus pulled away slowly. That's when I noticed there was no one in the driver's seat. No hands on the wheel. No hooded figure. Just an empty chair. The bus disappeared into the dark, engine noise fading until it was gone completely. I stood there shaking, breath coming out in short, useless bursts. My legs felt weak, rubbery. Behind me, somewhere down the street, I heard the pneumatic hiss of doors opening. I didn't turn around. I ran. Sixth story. The architecture of the uninvited. Everyone thinks the city is a grid. Straight lines. Clean angles. Easy to understand. It's not. It's a pile of new secrets built on top of old graves, with cables and pipes stitched through it like veins. And if you work nights, really work nights, you start to see where the stitches don't line up. I'm a fiber optic technician for the city. Low level. Union badge, bad coffee, no authority. My job is to crawl where no one else wants to go and make sure the lights stay fast and the lies stay smooth. Utility tunnels. Service corridors. Dead zones where GPS spins useless circles and your phone thinks you're underground in 3 different decades at once. That's where I learned about the city's extra rooms. We call them dark offsets. Spaces that show up on old schematics but not new ones. Corridors that exist on paper and nowhere else, until you're standing in one. There's an urban legend every department pretends not to know. The maintenance floor. The half floor. 13.5. Every building over 50 stories has one. Not on the elevator panel. Not in the leasing brochures. A service level, for mechanical systems. That's the lie. The truth is, the city builds places it doesn't invite people into. And sometimes, it invites something else. I first found one under Grant and Delaney, below a mirrored office tower that gives people headaches if they work too high up. My ticket was a signal drop. Fiber loss between nodes. Easy job. The access hatch wasn't on the map. It was behind a steam pipe, half buried in concrete dust. Old steel. City issue from before everything went plastic and cheap. The lock wasn't cut or broken. It was polished smooth, like a lot of hands had used it. Inside, the air smelled wrong. Wet concrete. Ozone. That sharp electric tang you get when high voltage runs too close to water. My head started to ache immediately. Low-frequency hum. You don't hear it so much as feel it, right behind your eyes. Same hum you get standing near a subway power rail, only steadier. Patient. The tunnel sloped down, then sideways, then, not at all. No incline. No reason. Streetlights above me flickered. I could feel it through the walls. All at once. Same millisecond. Like a single pulse. I told myself it was a transformer cycling. That's what you say when you don't want to think. The tunnel opened into a room that shouldn't fit under the street. Concrete walls. No markings. No graffiti. No trash. Clean in a way that felt intentional. The ceiling was low enough to make me hunch. Pipes ran along one wall but didn't connect to anything. They just ended. The floor was covered in keys. Thousands of them. House keys. Car fobs. Old brass skeleton keys. Bent ones. Broken ones. All piled ankle-deep like gravel. Some still had tags. Gym memberships. Apartment numbers. Smiley face keychains. Lost and found for an entire city. In the center of the room was a cable splice cabinet. City standard. I opened it. Inside were photos. Polaroids. Recent ones. People asleep in their beds. Couples. Kids. Old men with the TV still on. The angle was always wrong. Too close. Like the camera was inside the wall, pressed up against the drywall. Every photo had an address written on the back. Every address was active. I closed the cabinet and backed up. The hum got louder. That's when I noticed the cracks in the wall. They weren't random. They formed lines. Intersections. Angles. Letters. Stay in your lane. I laughed. Short. Dry. The kind of laugh you use to keep from running. I finished the repair. That's the thing I hate most about myself. I did the job. Cleaned the fiber ends. Reseated the coupler. Brought the signal back up. The city rewarded me with silence. No alarms. No errors. Just the hum, satisfied. After that, I started seeing patterns everywhere. Traffic lights blinking in sequences that weren't traffic. Cracks in the sidewalk spelling out street names that didn't exist. Reflections in mirror glass towers that lagged half a second behind the people casting them. There's another legend. The man in the mirror glass. The idea that some reflections don't belong to anyone on the street. I saw him on my walk home. Same height as me. Same jacket. He stopped when I stopped. But when I turned, there was no one behind me. Just my reflection, still walking, still watching. I filed a report. Nonspecific. Structural anomaly. Unmapped access. It came back approved. Closed. No follow-up. That's when I understood. The city knows. The maintenance floors aren't mistakes. They're pressure valves. Places where the city sheds what doesn't fit, lost keys, lost people, lost time. Modern rituals. No candles. No chanting. Just infrastructure doing what infrastructure does best. Managing flow. I tried to quit. Put in for a transfer. Day shift. Office work. They denied it. Now my badge opens doors it didn't before. Hatches I swear weren't there last week. Corridors that smell like wet concrete and ozone and feel warm, like something breathing just out of sight. The hum doesn't give me headaches anymore. It gives me comfort. Last night, I found a photo in one of the cabinets. Me. Asleep. On my couch. Shot from inside the wall behind the TV. On the back was my address. No apartment number. Just my name. I get it now. The skyscrapers aren't reaching for the clouds. They're bars of a cage. And I'm not trapped in it. I work here. The city didn't sleep. It just waited. And now, it knows I won't leave. 7th story. The Midnight Witness, terrifying encounters with the unknown on deserted roads. By the time the clock on my dashboard slipped past 12 a.m., the highway had emptied itself of the world. No headlights in the rearview mirror. No oncoming cars slicing through the dark. Just asphalt stretching forward, a black ribbon unspooling into nothing. The kind of road that feels forgotten, as if it exists only when someone is foolish enough to drive it. I told myself the silence was normal. Late night does that, drains the noise, thins the traffic, presses everything flat. Still, I turned the radio up. Static answered me. It wasn't the sharp hiss I expected. It pulsed, swelling and collapsing like breath. Every few seconds, something almost broke through, voices, maybe, but they collapsed into noise before forming words. I switched stations. Same static. I turned the radio off. The silence rushed back in, heavier now, like it had been waiting. Streetlights appeared ahead, spaced too far apart. Each one flickered as I passed beneath it, not failing entirely, just dimming, as though reacting to my presence. In the brief pools of light, I caught glimpses of the road's edges, scrubby grass, warped signs, guardrails that bent at odd angles before disappearing again. I passed a sign I was sure I'd seen earlier. Same chipped paint. Same crooked post. Same arrow pointing nowhere. I checked the GPS. The screen glowed reassuringly, the route intact, the distance slowly ticking down. Yet the road ahead looked unchanged, endlessly straight. No turns. No exits. No landmarks that stayed put when I wasn't looking directly at them. That was when I noticed the reflection. At first, I thought it was my own face, distorted by the windshield glass. But the shape in the glass didn't move when I did. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I leaned closer. The reflection blinked. I snapped my eyes back to the road, heart pounding. When I looked again, the glass showed only darkness and my own pale, tired face. I laughed quietly, the sound thin and brittle in the car. "Get it together," I whispered. The road answered with a sound, soft, rhythmic, wrong. Not from the engine. Not from the tires. From somewhere outside. It sounded like footsteps keeping pace with the car. I rolled the windows up, though they were already closed. The sound faded, or maybe I just stopped listening. Time stretched. The minutes felt loose, unanchored. The dashboard clock flickered, briefly showing a time I didn't recognize before snapping back to 12:07 a.m. It had been 12:07 for a long time. Another silhouette appeared ahead, standing just beyond the reach of the headlights. Human-shaped, but blurred, as if sketched and then partially erased. As I approached, it didn't move aside. It didn't move at all. At the last second, it wasn't there. I braked hard, tires screaming into the emptiness. The car stopped. The engine idled. The silence pressed in so tightly it felt physical, a weight on my chest. I was suddenly certain of something I couldn't explain. If I stepped out of the car, the road would notice. I stayed where I was. When I started driving again, the road felt narrower. The darkness closer. I had the unmistakable sensation of being watched, not from the sides, not from ahead, but from behind my eyes, as though something had taken up residence there, quietly observing through me. Memories began slipping. Small ones at first. I couldn't remember the last town I'd passed through. Then I couldn't remember why I'd taken this route. When I tried to recall where I was going, my mind returned only blankness, like a skipped frame in a film. Another sign loomed ahead. "You are still here." I blinked. The words were gone. Just a blank, reflective surface that showed my headlights and something standing behind them. This time, the reflection smiled. I didn't scream. I couldn't. Fear settled into me instead, cold and deliberate. I understood then, not clearly, but enough, that the road wasn't empty. It was patient. It didn't chase. It didn't reveal itself all at once. It waited for travelers to thin themselves out, mile by mile, thought by thought, until there was enough room inside them for something else. The radio turned on by itself. Through the static, I heard my own voice. Calm. Distant. Describing the road. Describing the silence. Describing the feeling of being watched. I reached to turn it off and hesitated, struck by a terrible certainty. If I stopped the broadcast, I might disappear from whatever was listening. The headlights flickered. The road stretched on. I don't remember stopping. I don't remember arriving. I only remember sitting somewhere safe when dawn finally came, unable to explain where I'd been, or why part of me felt left behind. Sometimes, late at night, when the world goes quiet, I hear static again. And underneath it, footsteps. I wonder if the road is still there. And if it's waiting for someone else to notice they were never alone. 8th story. Digital shadows, when online strangers become real-life nightmares. I've always liked the hours after midnight. That's when the world thins out, when messages slow, streets quiet, and the internet feels less like a crowd and more like a private room. Screens glow softer at night. Usernames replace faces. No one really knows you, and that used to feel safe. I was scrolling through a forum I'd visited for years, half reading threads, half listening to the hum of my computer fan. The clock in the corner of my screen read 1:38 a.m. Rain tapped against the window behind me, steady and unremarkable. A new message notification appeared. No username. Just a gray icon and a blinking cursor. Still awake. I frowned. Probably a glitch. The forum had been acting strange lately. I refreshed the page. The message stayed. Yeah, I typed. Who's this? The reply came instantly. Someone who keeps the same hours you do. I smiled despite myself. Harmless. Vague. Internet small talk. I asked how they found my account. You comment when you're tired. Your sentences get shorter. That gave me pause. It was true, but not something I'd ever noticed consciously. Still, anyone could scroll through my history. I shrugged it off. We talked for almost an hour. About nothing important, sleep schedules, work stress, how the nights felt longer lately. The conversation flowed easily, like we'd done this before. When I finally logged off, I felt oddly relaxed. The next morning, the message thread was gone. Not deleted, gone. No trace in my inbox, no username in my recent chats. I told myself it had been a dream, the kind your brain builds out of glowing screens and fatigue. That night, another notification appeared. Different platform. Same gray icon. You forgot to close the blinds this morning. My stomach tightened. I turned slowly in my chair and looked at the window. The blinds were closed now. I was sure of it. I didn't respond. I shut my laptop and went to bed, phone face down on the nightstand. Sleep came late and shallow, full of half-formed thoughts and the sense of being interrupted. The next few days, small things began to slip. Messages I deleted returned, unread. Notifications buzzed with no sender attached. My webcam light flickered once while I was typing, then went dark again. When I checked permissions, everything looked normal. At night, the stranger returned. Your hallway light flickers when you pass under it. You pause before opening the fridge, like you expect it to be empty. I stopped replying altogether. I logged out of everything. I unplugged my camera. I covered it anyway, just to be sure. Still, the messages came. Always late. Always precise. One evening, I noticed my reflection in the darkened monitor after shutting it down. For a moment, the room behind me didn't look right, too deep, like the shadows were leaning forward. When I turned, there was nothing there. Just my apartment, quiet and unchanged. The rain returned that night. I sat on the couch, lights off, phone in my hand, scrolling without seeing anything. A vibration made me jump. No app. No name. You're sitting closer to the door tonight. I stood up so fast the phone slipped from my hand. It hit the floor, screen still lit. The message remained. I checked the locks. All secure. I pressed my ear to the door, listening past my own breathing. The hallway outside was silent. When I picked the phone back up, a new message appeared. You didn't check the window. I didn't sleep. By the end of the week, time felt unreliable. Timestamps didn't line up. Messages claimed to be sent hours before I received them, or after. Once, I saw a notification pop up while my phone was powered off. I started leaving lights on. Music played constantly, a thin barrier against the quiet. But the stranger knew when the music stopped. Knew when I turned off a lamp. Knew when I stood still, listening. The worst part wasn't the fear. It was the familiarity. They typed like me. Short sentences. Careful punctuation. Sometimes they finished my thoughts before I realized I'd had them. One night, I finally typed back. What do you want? The reply came slowly this time. To stop pretending we're separate. My screen dimmed. For a second, I saw my reflection again, and this time, something moved behind me. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked back, the screen showed a live feed from my webcam. The cover I'd taped over it lay on my desk, neatly folded. I shut the laptop, heart hammering, and backed away. My phone buzzed. You should have left it on. I like seeing your face. I don't remember packing a bag. I don't remember leaving the apartment. I only remember standing outside, dawn just beginning to stain the sky, my phone silent for the first time in days. I thought it was over. That night, in a cheap motel miles away, I opened my laptop to check the time. A message waited for me. New room. Same shadows. I stared at the screen, hands shaking, and felt the last of the distance collapse. I finally understood what I'd mistaken for anonymity. Screens don't protect you. They teach you how to be watched. And somewhere, behind glass and signal and silence, something was still typing, waiting for me to look back.